Some people go to the gym to lose a few pounds. Some go to feel better. And then there are the ones on this list who went so far past the limit that they ended up losing limbs, killing people, or dying themselves. This is what happens when bodybuilding stops being a sport and starts becoming an obsession. We're counting down 10 of the most extreme cases in bodybuilding history. And I promise you, by the time we get to number 1, your jaw is going to be on the floor. Here's the thing about bodybuilding that nobody talks about. There's no finish line. When you're a regular person at the gym, you work out, you see some results, and at some point you think, okay, I'm good. But for some bodybuilders, that moment never comes. The body they have is never enough. The arms aren't big enough, the muscles aren't thick enough, and that hunger, that need to always be bigger and better, it pushes some people into places that are genuinely terrifying. And what makes it even more complicated is that the world rewards them for it, at least for a while. Attention, social media followers, sponsorships. So the cycle keeps going and going and going until something breaks. Let's get into it. Number 10, the Hulk brothers. We're starting with two brothers from Brazil who call themselves Tony Hulk and Alvaro Conan. And yes, those are their actual bodybuilding names. These two have been injecting a mix of oil and alcohol directly into their muscles for years, not to improve performance, but just to make their muscles look bigger. Here's why that's insane. When you inject oil into muscle tissue, it doesn't build anything. It just fills up the space like a balloon. The muscle looks huge, but it's not stronger, it's not healthier, it's just inflated. And the risks are massive. We're talking infections, nerve damage, and in the worst cases, amputation. But these brothers kept going because they wanted to look a certain way. And that drive was stronger than the fear of what might happen to them. It's hard not to feel conflicted watching this. On one hand, it's their bodies and their choices. On the other hand, this is what an addiction looks like.
Number 9, Denise Rudkovsky. Denise Rudkovsky was one of the most successful female bodybuilders of the 1990s. She competed at the highest level. She was strong, she was disciplined, and she was winning. But to get there, she was taking large amounts of testosterone, a hormone that's naturally much lower in women than in men. And over time, the side effects hit her hard. She started growing facial hair, her voice got deeper, her periods stopped. Her mental health started to decline. She went through severe depression that she's never fully recovered from. The worst part is that she didn't have to hit that wall. The sport pushed her to use more and more, and nobody around her stopped it from going too far. Her story is one of the most heartbreaking ones in this world because you can clearly see where it went wrong, and you can just as clearly see that it didn't have to end that way.
Number 8, Candace Armstrong. Candace Armstrong started the same way a lot of people do. She just wanted to get fit. Nothing crazy, nothing extreme, just healthier. But then fit turned into strong. Strong turned into bigger. And bigger turned into a steroid called trenbolone, which is so powerful that it's not even approved for human use. It's used on livestock, cattle. The effects on her body were severe. She developed facial hair, body hair, a much deeper voice. Her hormones were completely thrown off. And then she grew what she described as a small penis, which was actually her clitoris reacting to the extreme hormone levels. She said it herself in interviews. She knew it was getting out of control, but she couldn't stop. That's the definition of addiction.
Number 7, Greg Valentino. Greg Valentino has been famous and infamous in the bodybuilding world for decades. He started as a regular bodybuilder, but he got frustrated watching guys around him grow bigger and bigger arms while his stayed the same size. So he made a decision that changed everything. He started injecting Synthol, which is basically an oil, directly into his biceps. His arms reached 27 inches in circumference. To give you a reference point, that's roughly the size of a watermelon on each arm. His body looked like a cartoon drawing, and for a while, people couldn't stop looking at it, which was kind of the point. But then one of his biceps literally ruptured. He had to drain it himself because he was too embarrassed to go to a doctor. At home, with a needle on his own arm. He's still here and still talking about it openly, which is actually something I respect. He doesn't pretend it was a great idea, but the fact that it ever got to that point is wild.
Number 6. Valdir Segato. This is the guy they called Skinny Dog when he was young. And clearly that nickname stuck with him because he spent decades trying to become the exact opposite of that. Valdir, a bodybuilder from Sao Paulo, Brazil, has been injecting a combination of oil, alcohol, and painkillers into his muscles to inflate them beyond what natural bodybuilding could ever achieve. He models his look after the Incredible Hulk, and honestly, the resemblance is real. But so are the risks. Doctors have warned him that he's facing a very high chance of infections, nerve damage, stroke, and death, and he keeps going. What makes this story different from the others is that Valdir openly talks about his addiction to the way his body looks. He knows the danger. He just can't stop. Body dysmorphia is a real and brutal condition, and for a lot of people on this list, it's the engine behind everything. Number 5. Romario dos Santos Alves. This guy also wanted to look like the Hulk, and just like Valdir, he used the same dangerous cocktail of oil and painkillers to pump his muscles up to comic book proportions. But his story has an extra layer that makes it even more difficult to hear. The injections caused so much damage that at one point, doctors told him they might need to amputate both of his arms. He was in his 20s at the time. He has a wife and a child. He avoided losing both arms, but the damage was permanent. His health has been severely impacted, both physically and mentally. And he has said in interviews that he deeply regrets what he did, and that he wishes someone had stopped him earlier. Nobody did. That's the part that stays with you.
Number 4. Kirill Tereshin, the Russian Popeye. This one is almost hard to believe, but it's completely real. Kirill Tereshin, a former Russian soldier, had the nickname Popeye because of his large biceps. But he wanted more. And when regular training stopped producing the results he wanted, he came up with a plan that is genuinely one of the most baffling decisions in the history of this sport. He injected petroleum jelly, Vaseline, into his biceps. His arms swelled up to enormous sizes. They looked absolutely massive. And then the petroleum jelly hardened inside his muscle tissue and formed solid masses in his arms. Doctors told him that without emergency surgery, he would lose both arms or die. He had the surgery. A huge amount of the petroleum jelly was removed, along with a significant portion of his own muscle tissue. He survived, but he's going to be dealing with the consequences of that decision for the rest of his life. Number 3. Paul Dillett. Paul Dillett was one of the most talented bodybuilders of the 1990s. He was huge, he was lean, and he had a physique that genuinely turned heads in a room full of elite athletes. But the moment he's most remembered for isn't a victory, it's a collapse. At the 1994 Arnold Classic, one of the biggest competitions in the sport, Dillett had taken a heavy dose of diuretics to look as dry and shredded as possible on stage. The problem is that diuretics pull all the water out of your body, including from your muscles, and if you push that too far, your body starts to cramp. While he was on stage, mid-pose, he went into full body cramps. He lurched forward. He fell off the stage. The audience watched it happen in real time. After 25 minutes of treatment and rehydration, he went back out. And it happened again.
he was carried off the stage and taken to the hospital. He came back and competed for almost 2 more decades after that. But that moment at the Arnold Classic is what bodybuilding fans remember, because it showed in the most public way possible exactly how far too far can take you.
Number 2. Gordon Kimbrough. This story takes a turn that none of the others do. Gordon Kimbrough was a bodybuilder who, by all accounts, started out as a quiet and gentle person. But he became addicted to both bodybuilding and the steroids that came with it. And steroids, particularly when abused over long periods of time, can have serious effects on your brain. Mood swings, rage, paranoia. The stuff people call roid rage is real, and it's not a joke. In 1993, Gordon got into an argument with his wife. He had become convinced she was being unfaithful. And in a moment that the steroids likely had a major hand in, he lost control completely and killed her. He was a man who was completely overtaken by an addiction he didn't get help for, and a woman lost her life because of it. It's the darkest possible outcome of what can happen when bodybuilding stops being about health or sport and becomes something else entirely.
Number 1. Sally McNeil. If Gordon Kimbrough's story shocked you, this one is going to hit just as hard. Sally McNeil and her husband Ray were both bodybuilders. They had been married for 8 years, and it was not a happy marriage. There were fights, there was jealousy, there was violence on both sides. And both of them were using steroids heavily, which was adding fuel to an already explosive situation. On Valentine's Day in 1995, Ray came home late. An argument started. Ray attacked Sally and tried to strangle her. She got free, went and got a gun, came back and shot him. Once in the stomach. He fell to his knees. She shot him again, in the jaw. He was declared dead 2 hours later. Sally was convicted of second-degree murder and spent years in prison. The details of the case are complicated. The abuse was real. The danger was real. But so was the outcome. 2 people caught in a cycle of addiction, rage, and violence. And only one of them walked away from it. It's the most extreme example on this entire list of what happens when bodybuilding stops being about the body and starts consuming everything else, including the people around you.
So there it is. 10 stories that started with someone wanting to be bigger, stronger, or just better than they were, and ended in places that nobody should ever end up. The thing is, bodybuilding itself isn't the villain here. Plenty of people compete their whole lives and stay healthy and happy. But the obsession, the need to always push further without any line in the sand, that's where things go wrong. And when there's no support, no one to say, hey, this is getting dangerous, people end up injecting Vaseline into their arms, or worse. If there's anything to take away from all of this, it's that no muscle in the world is worth your life, or anyone else's.